I'd now like to invite up on the stage Ryan Gallagher. Ryan is the CEO of iovox, and he's going to talk about AI and how AI is being embraced in the conversations that are occurring between buyers, sellers, renters, and agents. Okay? Over to you. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. It's very bright up here. So this is not going to be a sales pitch. I'm actually really going to talk about AI in general because everybody's talking about AI, but I hear a lot of terms being misused, so I thought I'd use this to share something I'm very passionate about, which is AI. So I'm going to start with the basics. What is AI? So AI is basically getting a computer to think like a human. That's effectively the definition of AI. So you're trying to make a computer think like a human. Most people don't know this, but the term computer actually used to refer to humans. So people who computed things, which was usually mathematical, but it could also be other things, they were called computers, and we replaced them with machines. So it's funny now that we think that AI is going to replace us at other things, because that's effectively what a computer has already done. And there's a big difference between programs and AI. So I'm going to use chess as an example. You can teach something to play chess by doing an if-else rule set. So it's a very extensive rule set. If I move this pawn to here, and if this person moves here, then these are my options, and this is what will be my preferred path. That is a program, that is not AI. The difference between that and artificial intelligence is that with artificial intelligence, you can actually give it the rules, load 1,000 games, and it will play the games itself. It will teach itself how to win at chess. So it's a very different approach. However, a lot of the laws are using these. So they're using these as differentiations between programs and AI. You can create loopholes in this by using AI to effectively create a chess program with a very extensive if-else loops. So you can actually create a program with AI that is no longer AI. So it doesn't count in many of the new laws. So email is a good example, which I'm going to use because AI has been used in spam detection for a long, long time. So that's Ella. She's in charge of product with us. So a really good example is if Ella sends 100,000 emails in a year, if we want to know if she mentioned a delayed release date, that is fairly simple. That is keyword searching. Even if she may say that in 20 different ways, we can create variations of that, and we can actually figure out how many times did she refer to that in an email. But if you want to know if she was angry when she wrote that email, this becomes incredibly difficult. Obviously, we have sentiment analysis, but it is not that accurate. So most people, as everybody knows in a workforce, when you've had emails sent and people have misread them and thought somebody was angry, but they weren't because the email was short, it's very difficult to do, but that is effectively one of the things that we're getting AI to do, is to try and figure out what the human actually meant. So I'm going to go through a list of terms in AI, which you've heard of. Some of you heard of, some of you haven't. So we've got generative AI, which is often confused with general AI. They're two very different terms. Generative AI is an AI model which creates new content. It generates new content. So for example, here's a picture of 100 cats. Here's a picture of 100 dogs. I want a cross. Show me a picture of something which is half cat, half dog. That is generative AI. It is making something new. Discriminative AI is not. Discriminative AI is classifying data. So you can load loads of phone calls in, you can load loads of medical data in, and you can tell it to cluster data, you can tell it to find out what the outcome was. These are both treated very differently in law in a lot of places as well, because one is generating new things, there's copyright infringements, there's all kinds of things going on. Discriminative AI is fairly simple legally, because all you're doing is taking existing data and you're actually trying to sort it out, cluster it, all that sort of stuff. And you've got different types of models. Large language models are effectively what a computer is using to try and figure out what a human is saying. So that composed of many different things, but there's a list there of NLP, which is natural language processing, which is effectively the core of most LLMs. NER, which is entity recognition. So it's named entity recognition. An entity is a name, an email address, a phone number, a date, a time. These are things which you're pulling out of data to isolate them because they're pertinent pieces of information. And then you have sentiment analysis, which works in multiple different ways. Then you have foundational models, which are more vague sort of AI models. And then you have two different types of AI, narrow and general. A lot of people are referring to general AI and narrow AI. Narrow AI is, for example, used in medical, it's used in real estate, it has a specific group of knowledge. General AI, at the moment, is purely theory. It does not yet exist. People refer to general AI, but general AI is actually non-existent yet. It is really a computer which thinks and acts as a human. We don't have that yet, but it is probably coming, unfortunately, pretty soon. So what is machine learning and where does that fit into it? So machine learning is how you train an AI effectively. You teach it. So there's different types of learning. I've listed out a few of the main ones here. So you have unsupervised learning. What you do with unsupervised learning is you pile a whole bunch of data into a machine and you ask it to cluster the data and find anomalies and find patterns in the data. You don't tell it what the outcome is, it tells you the outcome itself, which is different from supervised learning. In supervised learning, you basically provide a whole bunch of data. For example, we do this with calls. We'll say, here's 100,000 calls, here's 10,000 calls, which resulted in a booking. You're then asking the AI to figure out why. What words or what phrases or what things, could be the time of the call, resulted in it becoming a booking. So you're basically training it, this is the outcome, and then it will predict the outcome on the next call. So it will be able to say, actually, this was a booking as well. But you're actually giving it that sort of information up front. Semi-supervised is obviously similar. Reinforcement learning is when you continue to train things. That's used, for example, in an autonomous vehicle. And neural networks and deep networks are a whole different basket where you've effectively created a multi-layered AI model which is similar to a human brain. The issue with neural networks is we don't really understand how they reach the conclusions. And that's important because of transparency, which is getting very, very pertinent at the moment with the EU AI Act and various other laws, because they're asking you to prove why did it come to this conclusion. Sometimes you don't know. And a lot of the deeper AIs, the smarter AIs, we have no idea how they came to the conclusion. So a lot of these laws are effectively going to be outlawing some of the smarter AIs. The other thing is you have inaccuracy and hallucinations. We can send one call 10 times to a model, we will get 10 different answers, and one of them might be ludicrous. We don't really know why. Sometimes if you ask the question incorrectly, like, there's so many genie jokes where you ask a genie for something and you get something completely different because you didn't actually specify the question enough. Sometimes it's a question. Sometimes your data is dirty. Sometimes we have no idea. And an AI model will just come out with completely fabricated information. Because it's not just looking at your data, it's looking at countless other pieces of data. So what you put into it is taken into account, but it is not necessarily the only driving factor. So this comes down to privacy as well. When you're using AI, you have to be extremely careful. So it's like taking a drop of water and dropping it into the ocean and expecting to be able to get it back out. You can't. Once your information gets on the internet in general, everybody knows, there's the old saying, once it's on the internet, you can never take it back. AI is very similar, and sometimes we don't even know how to get that data back. So a lot of the times you would have to blow away the entire model because you cannot pull your data back out. You don't know what it's poisoned, what it's gone into other different algorithms inside the AI. So privacy is incredibly important. If you put your data into a learning model, it will use that data specifically to train other people's questions. So you can put data into an AI engine and it can take your data and use it as an answer for somebody else. And it's changing, the legal landscape. You've got the old laws, GDPR, CCPA, the ethical AI guidelines, class action lawsuits coming up. But now you've got the new laws coming up as well, like the EU AI Act and the AAA. But the EU AI Act is probably the most comprehensive law at the moment, which is still not in action, but it is coming out. It's very vague, and it has very strange definitions which will be changed over time. When it first was predicted, generative AI basically didn't really exist. So the problem with these laws, they will never keep up with the actual technology which is out there. So what's going to happen is they're going to be very restrictive, and they're going to be probably excessive in terms of the punishments. People say any marketing is good marketing. This is not the case. We've all heard horror stories with AI. Samsung leaked their entire source code and transcripts dealing detailed messages. Microsoft themselves, who are founders of OpenAI, they dropped 38 terabytes of company data, including user passwords, Wi-Fi passwords, et cetera, et cetera. Nightmare. ChatGPT, they leaked premium users' personal information, credit card details, and questions and answers that you'd asked an AI. Other people were able to see that data. Do not be a headline. Be extremely careful what you do with AI. But the train has left the station. You can't stop it. I remember when I worked at Alstom, which is France's biggest company, when Wi-Fi came out. Most people probably don't remember that. I was a network engineer. It was a nightmare. We banned Wi-Fi in 78 countries. You can see how that went. But the problem was we would go to offices and we'd see 5 hotspots. It was usually a manager who plugged one in under his desk so that they could take their laptop back and forth. And the only thing we could do was embrace it really quickly. So we said, we have to set up our own one, which is secured, it's encrypted, and then ban them. But you can't stop it. And that's the same as AI. If you think your staff aren't using AI, you're wrong. So we use AI, obviously. We actually use it on real conversations, which are spoken word, very different to structured text, very difficult. And we actually use all our stuff in-house. So we don't use shared models. We bring a model in-house, we disconnect it, we train it ourselves. We're very, very careful about what we do with AI. And we can go through lists and lists of examples, but a lot of it is, booking rates between one site and another. This is 40%, these ones are 90% booking rates. Why? What happened in the call? Did this person need a mortgage? Did they have a house to sell? There's loads of different use cases for AI, which I'm not going to bother going into all the details because it's not a sales pitch. But people are rushing. This is not my term, this was from Forbes. But people are rushing because they have AI anxiety. They're trying to get products to market as fast as possible. Do not do this. It is a massive risk. So my summary is, it's a gold mine. But if you mine gold, sometimes you're going to die. So be very careful what you're doing with this because it is absolutely a gold mine, but it is also extremely dangerous and very, very risky. But you have to embrace it because it's too late. It's already happening. So you have to be careful, but it's the future. You have no choice. That's me.
Thank you, Ryan, for that. Can we bring up the questions, please? Because I think it was a very pertinent and timely presentation. Let's start with the first one here, which is this one here, right? You mentioned about privacy issues once you input something into AI is out there and it's going to be used to answer other people's questions. So leaks, etc., back and forth. What is your take on letting Bard, I think it's meant
Bard,
to be,
yeah.
Not the subway system.
That's
in
what I
San
first
Francisco,
thought, yeah.
or any other AI assist you to read and summarize your emails and help you write new emails?
If you value privacy, don't do it.
Okay.
I mean, it's really that simple. Even some of the systems which are telling us they're GDPR compliant, they're not. I mean, you can read the fine print. It's like very vague. There's no way they can guarantee it. So unless your model is unplugged, trained by you, and is not used as a learning model for anything else, I mean, ChatGPT for private users who paid ended up leaking all the information. So my solution is don't do it.
Okay.
Unless you don't care. For the personal emails, that's fine.
Okay, I understand that. Daisy says, regarding the legal landscape, do you believe that we will find strong difference between the EU and US regulations? And how will that impact the AI on the real estate industry?
Yes, in short. So like we operate in the US, obviously, and the EU and various other countries. Just basic privacy laws are completely different. The EU is so much different. The US is the wild, wild west, with the exception being California, who has a similar GDPR structure that is fairly new. But they will be nowhere near the same. The levels of compliance will be different. And the big issue is a lot of these AI companies are coming out of the US. They don't understand GDPR. They don't understand privacy because it's not native.
So how will these cross-border issues be handled? Right, so if I'm a US-based company building some AI stuff, it's being consumed in France, for argument's sake. What law applies?
Well, so it depends. It's usually where the user is and then where the company entity is. But the EU Act is trying to say that you as a company in the US, for example, will be liable based on where that is sold and where the person who's consuming the service is. The EU AI Act is basically treating it like a product. So it's like, is it a toy or an appliance? So it's basically sold in that market. It has to oblige by those markets. But how do you stop Google? I mean, we've seen this with privacy issues already with Facebook, where somebody says, delete all my information, and Facebook say no. It's already in the US. That data is in the US right now, and it's owned by a US topco. So the FBI have access to it. Other government bodies have access to it. They have a lower requirement than we do in the EU to be able to access that. So it goes back for years. I used to design networks, as I said before. So one of the things was we would proxy data, streaming video, for example. We had certain countries that we could just put proxies outside. But we put them in the border, all of a sudden, you're breaking the law. 1 mile outside the border, it's totally fine. Yeah. So you'll see a lot of colos were built just outside borders of certain countries.
So large companies basically have a very large lawsuit budget, and they go, you know what, I can't comply, too hard to comply. I know I'm going to get sued. I've put $1 billion aside for payouts, because I know I'm going to have to pay out at some point in time, and let's get on with business.
Yeah. A lot of people are going to do that.
Okay.
And I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to regret that because there's class action lawsuits coming. There's also just your brand, right? I mean, some of these companies, you're never going to get your brand back once you do that. We've seen it historically, so.
Okay. A couple of other quick questions. How to record calls between, I don't understand the question because it's not really a question. How to record calls between third parties, I don't think that.
We record calls basically end to end, so we don't really have third parties as such.
And the last question is, AI going to kill us all?
I think we're probably more likely to kill us all than AI is to kill us. I'm all in favor of handing over to the computers. I think we as a race have failed. And I think we're only getting worse. I'm not worried about AI killing us because I think we'll probably get there first.
Okay. Well, on that pleasant note, Ryan, thank you very much.
Thank
A very
you.
insightful presentation.
Thanks.